All right. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of convos.dev. We are two friends that talk about tech and life and everything in between. And today we want to talk about starting a new role. So I think maybe a lot of you who are listening have either started new roles within a relatively tenured career, or maybe it is legitimately your first role ever in whatever job or corporate America you're doing. And yeah, we wanted to just exchange notes on what works well and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And as you all know, I've also started a new role recently, but also Chris has started many new roles. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of want to discuss.
Especially when I did like all my side gigs, I felt like I was starting a new role like every week or whatever. But thankfully now, not as frequent. But yeah, I'm super excited to hear about your new role and kind of how you've fit into that new company.
There's a bunch of thoughts that I have, and I'm just going to brain dump and then we'll
Let's
just
do
talk
it.
about it.
Okay.
So I think the preface here, before I do talk about anything, is over the years, so I'm 8 years into my career now, um, and I guess out of college. And one thing that's changed significantly for me compared to maybe some of my peers or people who may be listening is at this point in my career, I don't care as much about title. I don't care about getting like the biggest pay package. You know, hadn't had to deal with promo packages in a long time. All this stuff, like if you work at Amazon or Microsoft, that might be completely different for you. But that's just something I think I should preface because it does change a lot about how I approach things. But yeah, I think the high level things that I've jotted down when I'm starting a new job is one, I think understanding what levers of the company are and are not working. So, for example, I might join a company and be like, they have really good sales motion or go to market motion, and they have a really good marketing motion. But maybe the things that aren't working is that their marketing and engineering are not good at communicating with each other. There's no muscle, there's no connector.
Hmm.
Or maybe their process is really long, like maybe just to get a project off the ground, it takes a while and they just don't have certain muscles. So I think having an understanding of that, understanding where does the power sit, like who at the
Hmm.
company, and not who like one person, but what team at the company generates revenue or has the power. Is it sales? Is it product? Is it engineering? Is it marketing? Is it growth? And then also understanding what particular strengths leadership, aka like the CEO, has.
Hmm.
So the CEO might be really good at product and engineering, but they suck at social media, or they might be really good at like front facing, like podcasts and videos. Or they might be like, Dylan Fields, like always on social media, really good at Twitter, all this stuff. Like every CEO is going to have their strengths, and it's kind of like understanding that, just understanding all of that is good for you and politics in general. I think a couple tips I have
Yeah.
is really take onboarding seriously. Like, of course, you want to start diving into the things that you're supposed to be doing really quickly, but I actually would suggest taking time to take on projects that try to span different functions of the company, like as much as you can. Try to take on projects that impact, that let you work with an engineer or let you work with somebody from product design or things like that, just so you can get a sense of cross-functional work and how that process goes, as well as like really take time to learn the product.
I love that. And I think as an overarching like principle or like thing to remember, one thing that's always struck me is when we hire new people or as a new hire yourself, like you only get a first impression once. And like that first impression is what every person who comes to your product gets. Like they have that. But most of the time within the company, like you're only getting that one time personally. And so like you really have to make the most of that. And of course there's this tension between like wanting to come in and say things, but not be like the person who comes in and says, here's how to fix everything here, or like this doesn't work, or, but genuinely, you really only get to read the docs once as a first time viewer without all this inside knowledge. So that new hire, like first several weeks, 3-4 weeks or whatever, is just such golden, like true opportunity to really see the product fresh from somebody who is being paid to basically learn the product fresh. And so I think a lot of times it's easy to waste that time either because you feel pressure to start doing and shipping right away, or because you don't want to like look like you think you know everything. And so I think one of the things I've really appreciated about Resend is we do this friction log thing when you first join, where we basically want you to go through and just not tear apart the product, but basically say like, here's all the things I ran into. Like this didn't make sense.
Yep.
And it was just 5 seconds of confusion, but it was enough for me to say like, this could be smoother. And so I think that's really instilled in the company culture, like this idea of like those first days are so important, but I think it's easy to miss those. So I really resonate with a lot of the things you brought up. And I think it's like that fresh eye view that's so crucial in a company's, in your relationship with a company.
Yeah, that's actually really smart. My mentor, like the person who helped onboard me, told me to write a friction log, and then I started, and then I stopped. Like I forgot to keep writing things, but instead of writing it in a doc, I just put it. We have a product Slack channel.
Yeah.
I just started spamming the Slack channel. I was like, oh, I don't understand this part of the docs, or this UI looks weird, or things like that. And I've just been doing that. The thing about first impressions is so real. You are the person who gets to see where all the holes are in both the product and also the team, and also like the docs and educational stuff. So
the balance of the team, like all those kinds of things, you kind of really get one shot at seeing that fresh. But I guess yes and no, because I think I've also found like if you're conscious about that, you can find new opportunities to get those new impressions. So like, for instance, we just shipped this open source package where people can take their data from Resend using webhooks. We basically give them like a one-click install where you can store that data yourself, since we have like a retention policy and you may want to keep stuff longer. And the team that helped put it together, a couple people helped put it together, and they're like, hey, could you review the docs and like help us like get the wording across the line? And I'm like, I don't want to see anything until it's done. Like you do everything, and then I'm going to see it first time, and I'm going to run through it like a normal user. And anything I hit up against, I will tell you, and this didn't make sense. And then I did do like a pretty massive edit on the doc and on the changelog, but it was from that perspective rather than like, let me kind of keep up with what's going on. And like I intentionally stayed in the dark so that I could get a first time impression. And hopefully it's better for it, but I think you can find moments like that, but there's this time when you join a company where like everything gets to be like that. If you can find a way to capture it where it's not like, like we said, where it doesn't sound like you're trying to come in and like bash the product or, think you know everything or whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of that comes down to how you communicate it.
Yeah, I like that you stood your ground like that. I feel like a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, I'll take a look now, blah, blah, blah. I like that you kind of are like, oh no, like I'm not taking a look in until, I like that.
Every now and then I can say no, but it's not very frequent. So that's a problem.
What other tips do you have?
Yeah, I think for me, like they say it's the people you work with that matter the most. And it's not just a saying, like it truly is. Like that's what keeps you at a job. And usually that's what makes you leave a job, not always. And so I think for me, really valuing those relationships from the beginning, like being a person, like you really only get, usually you only get that kind of bandwidth to really have like an introductory conversation with somebody. Like you get to figure out about their life and what they like to do. And like, I'm not going to do that to somebody who's been around for 8 months and be like, so let's chat about like, unless we've already had that discussion usually. And so at least when I joined, like the first thing I did was set up, now we were a small team at the time, but set up one-on-ones with everyone over the next like 2 weeks and just spent time just chatting. And every time a new person joins right now, I do the same thing with them. Like I always ping them and say like, hey, let's chat. And it's like 10 minutes or sometimes 30 or whatever, but just asking questions and things like that, because those relationships strengthen the bonds within the company. They build trust. They allow you to like reach out to that person when you need something. It gives context for questions. So I think one thing I would really encourage people with is like, don't be so obsessed quickly with the work that you forget that it's the people you're working with. So that's one tip I had.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I both agree and I don't agree. It's
Let's hear it.
difficult. Like my perspective on this is probably changing. You have to understand my background, because my background started at Microsoft, and I would say that kind of in a way, in a kind of sad way, crushed what I thought would be the relationship I had with coworkers. And it's not Microsoft's fault, and it's not a specific person's fault. It's just corporate America. I thought I would come in, be friends with everybody, but the team that I worked on was like all, people of families, and they just wanted to come in, clock in, and leave. And on top of that, there were a lot of people who just weren't my style. Like, we just weren't the same people.
Yeah.
Different cultures. And it's not saying I can't be friends with people of different cultures. It's just sometimes corporate America makes it hard to be friends in a way, And even the friends I did have, it was hard because I was still navigating the idea of like being a friend with somebody who's also gonna eventually write my perf review.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's fair.
it felt like a weird balance. And then remote work happened, like COVID happened, and then I was like, wow, I love being at home. I'm a big introvert, I'm a big homebody, and I'm very good at separating work and personal. And there was a point where I was like, I'm totally fine just being like, doing my job, and then I'm just gonna go live my life.
Yeah.
And I guess when you also become a little bit desensitized to work, or you wanna like, you don't want work to be your whole life, you just want work. There was a point where I was like, work is for money, and I like my job, but I'm not gonna like really put so much time into my job. I just want to go live my life.
Sure.
You kind of have the separation between, okay, these are my friends and this is what I enjoy and this is just work. And that there's been a push and pull of that over time. Like there has been times where I actually do invest a lot into work and care about the people I work with, but then there's times I don't. Yeah. It's difficult. I don't do the thing where I set up time with everybody. I just assume that eventually
You'll bump up against.
we'll bump up, like we'll work with each other, and then they'll be like, Jess is such a pleasure.
She's amazing.
Not really.
Yeah. I think there's definitely ways it can go wrong. Like the idea of like, I think you kept using the word friend, and I'm sure I probably used that. I mean it less in like a formal sense, like these are my friends, as much as like to get stuff done, you have to have relationships. Like ultimately, like you need to know each other. How do each other communicate best? Like what are the things that frustrate the person and what do they enjoy? Like, and so like, I think for me, like a lot of my interactions are only ever strengthened by my closeness to those people. And there's certainly people like at Resend that I'm much closer to than others. There's some people that I don't talk to a ton, but like I could get along with them kind of thing. Some of it probably is personality. I think if you're like saying, my best friends have to be at work, you're doing it wrong. So if that's like kind of the angle you would take, then I think that could be an overreaction perhaps. But I also think like, if you're like, I don't really care how the person communicates, I don't really care how they think, like, I'm sure if I really need them, I can just ping them and say, give me this thing. Like, I think that ends up breeding a culture where it's mostly corporate-y. And probably a lot of this is that I'm in such a small team, and probably a lot of it is just my personality and kind of how the rest of my life works. And I have like super strong friends outside of work, with church and, just local friends here, my family. And so I think too, like I'm not dependent on a work for friendships, but I do want my work connections to be friendly, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Like
So that's a little qualification on what I said, maybe. I think some of it is my particular role at Resend, like ends up touching a lot of different parts. Like I have to constantly be connected to everyone. And so like it makes sense for me to do that. If you're like a back end engineer and like maybe you're like never interacting with design, you might be like, I'm not going to like try to develop a relationship. That's fine. I totally get that. I think my particular role has to touch those. So usually what I do is just say like, hey, I would love to get to, this is why it's easy at the beginning, which is why I was bringing this up. Like it's a lot easier when someone first joins to just say, hey, I'd love to just kind of connect for a couple minutes. Do you have 15 minutes? I could just get to know you. And so usually I'm just like, hey, like it's very easy for people to kind of tell their story of how they got there. Like, I'd love to hear like kind of what you've been doing, what brought you here, where you're from, like that kind of stuff. And usually in 15 minutes, either it kind of is clear that like we need to go more, or it's clear that like, that was good. Like, we're great. So a lot of times I'll say like, hey, I'd love to spend like 15, 20 minutes. I can just grab 15 minutes on your calendar. And if we, if you have more time, we can chat more if we want to. And a lot of times, like within that first 15 minutes, I'm mostly wondering like, what do they enjoy doing? Like, what are they good at within their role? How does my role interact with theirs? What are they like doing outside of work, just to get a little bit of sense, like who they're at, where they're at in life. Sometimes I'll ask about family stuff, but like that kind of depends on usually they have to kind of hint towards something. Just because I don't want to get overly personal if they don't want to. But yeah, a lot of times in my particular role, I'm kind of figuring out what they like to do, where they're at work, and say like, okay, here's where I'm at in my job. And I don't know how much we're going to interact, but like really one of the things I try to do is like, I try to take the people at Resend and make them like more visible to the world so that people see them and think like, oh man, Resend has cool people,
So nice.
And so what are ways that I could do that, that would take pressure off you having to like produce content or that kind of stuff? Like, are there things where you're like, I have thoughts on this, but I don't want to write a blog post, or I don't want to do a video on it, or I would really like to actually do this, review an open source project you put together. Like, are there things like that kind of would excite you about that kind of interaction? Or are you kind of like, I'm good? And so usually like that's part of the conversation too. So I'd say like, I want to get to know them personally as much as they feel like opening up, hopefully in a way that's not like pushy or anything. Tell a little bit about like myself, my role and how it relates to them, and just basically say, I'm here to help and I'd love to connect if I can be a help to you. So a lot of times it kind of ends with me saying like, just know if you ever have an idea, if you ever want to like push something that you're doing that's kind of behind the scenes, like that's what I live for, is to kind of help you get that message out. So feel free to ping me about that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how I end it usually. But I don't know that I have like a super strict structure to it, or that I'm like trying to get us, like I have a KPI or whatever that I'm trying to hit, in the call. So I'd say it's more just
that totally makes sense.
like, do we connect? How do they chat? How do they like to communicate? That kind of thing.
I think that's totally fair. You're such a good connector. You actually really like to learn about people. I like to learn about people too, but I think I'm also like, man, that's a lot of energy.
Sorry. No, I think people are genuinely super interesting. And like,
I agree.
I've never met somebody who wasn't. And sometimes I'll connect with them way deeper later, but a lot of times it's just like, man, it's cool to meet new people. And like, I don't know, but maybe I'm not like a super extrovert. I'm very personally much more of an introvert, but I think I've been in enough roles where I have to act like an extrovert. That
but as we've established, introverts love humans and
that's
extroverts
right.
don't.
Introverts actually like people.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah. Exactly. Major takeaway.
This is lore from our previous podcast.
Yeah, I'm curious about the CO leadership. Like you mentioned, like what are they good at? How do you use that information? Like, is it mostly because of kind of your role of more like a DevRel type thing where you're trying to figure out like, how do I push? Or is it more like what excites the CEO? So that's where I should be pushing to like get visibility. And I don't even mean that in a mean way, but just like if they're clearly wanting that to be the main thing, then that needs to be my attention. I'm curious like what your motivation is there.
Yeah, I think one shift that I've had is when I worked at big companies, obviously at Microsoft or something, you view the CEO as this untouchable god, that it's just like leading the company. And so you have that image of them as just like this person who just can do everything and is really good at everything and just amazing. And then you get to smaller startups and you kind of humanize the CEO.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, they're just a person who has flaws and has preferences and is just trying to do the best they can. And when you see them that way, it's kind of like, oh, they similar to literally every other person at the company have strengths and weaknesses. They have things they like to do and they don't like to do. And a lot of the time, understanding that helps me understand like how they're leading the company and maybe why they're making certain decisions. And also sometimes the decisions that they're making comes out of a place of fear or lack of knowledge about the things that they just don't know about. Like a lot of the time, maybe CEOs just know nothing about content or social media. And if they don't gear the company that way, maybe it's my job to at least educate them or push on things that I know about, because I think it's the right thing to do from a growth or educational perspective, but also just to teach them like what does the strategy look like? That's kind of how I've approached it.
And more finding like the value adds you can bring based on kind of where their weaknesses or strengths happen to be. Well, I'm super excited to see you step into this new role and have all those one-on-ones. It's going to be amazing. You just tell me about all these cool people there. But I'm just teasing. But I do think like you may not be as formal about that as I would be, like, but I think it's mostly probably just because I know I'd forget about it if I didn't. So like I think it's totally fair for it to be informal and to make those connections. But I think like you are very much a connector too in that way. So I think it's less about the method of doing that and more about the fact that you're thinking, I need to make connections, and like giving that thought. So I know from working with you that you kind of already think that way. And even hearing you talk a lot about like observing, seeing what's going on, what's working, what's not. I think it's super interesting, and I'm excited to see as you kind of continue to worm into this role.
Wow, such compliments from Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, tool review, tools. What is
Okay.
your tool to show today?
So tool today is this GitHub repo, I guess. It's called Mole, Mole. But it basically
Mole.
replaces things like clean my Mac and stuff like that. But you can run a command to basically clean up a bunch of space on your disk, like delete old things you don't need anymore. It'll uninstall things. But I just ran across it a couple weeks ago, and it's been super helpful. Like it's found a bunch of stuff that somehow is just stuck in my hard drive, and clears a bunch of like user cache and things like that. So as somebody who doesn't have the biggest hard drive on my computer, it's been super helpful, and it's nice to even just clear up like memory and things like that in an intelligent way. So that's the tool I brought today.
This is crazy. This is so random.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. I'll place my battery in a sec. But I'm 100% sure this screenshot is from Warp.
Oh yeah. There you go.
I recognize this background. Anyways, maybe not. I could be proven wrong. That's super cool though.
Yeah.
I have to use that because I am often running out of memory on my machine. But it's usually just coming from Final Cut Pro, just taking up a lot of my
Actually though.
memory.
Yeah.
Okay, mine is actually it's funny, we both have animal like names for our show and tell, because mine's Otter. Otter.ai. Have you seen this or heard of it?
I have used it,
So
but I
it's
can't remember what it is.
Yeah, it's an app on your phone. It also has a web version, but essentially it's just a transcription. You just
that's right.
open it and you speak, and it will just transcribe it for you. And I use it I've been trying to set up this thing called Second Brain, where you just like almost journal, but I hate typing. So I will just speak. I will go in my car and drive, or I will pace around or go on a walk, and I will talk for 30 minutes about whatever's going on, about work, about things I'm thinking about. And Otter will transcribe it, and then I can take that transcription and just do a bunch of stuff with. Maybe I'll ask it something like, oh, what are themes that I've been thinking about, or things like that. But yeah, Otter.ai, downloaded it on my phone, and I just open it up and I just talk for a long time.
Yeah, I'm curious. I have used it in some context a while ago. I don't remember what it was. I'm now on like my third or fourth transcription thing. I'm now using something called Monologue, which I found to be very fast and accurate. So that's why I ended up switching from that, from another one I was using before. But I'm curious what you're doing with that. Like, is it in Obsidian? Like, where are you storing all this stuff? Yeah, the Second Brain.
Yeah, I'm not even that complex. It's literally just a folder on my, documents, and I will literally, when I want to like do synthesis or memory, I will zip it up, put it into ChatGPT, and have it read everything and ask a question.
Nice.
It's a very it's just basic. I've heard of tools like Acidity and Notion. There people use like Lindy.ai is another one. Like there's like Second Brain tools.
Yeah.
It's just easier for me to just
it?
ChatGPT. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have a show and tell today.
Yes.
That is yet another clock. I don't think I've shown this yet. It's a Pomodoro timer.
No, you haven't.
So yeah, but
No, you have.
I have shown this?
Yeah, because I showed this one, and I think you pulled that one out, not as an official show and tell, but
I had another
different
clock. One? Yeah.
Oh
this
my
has
God.
replaced that. I'm so sorry. But yeah, this is actually a Pomodoro timer. The other one was just like a clicky stopwatch that I got off Amazon. This one is way too expensive, but it has cool interactions. But yeah, you have you can set different like standards or whatever. So like here's a 45 and 50. That's a custom one, and then a 25 and 5. And you just start it, and it counts down and basically eventually hits like a little tone to tell you like, okay, it's time to switch. In fact, I'm just going to move it all the way down so that you can hear what it sounds like in 4 seconds. And then it basically switches between the two once it hits that. Pleasant, right?
It's a pleasant sound. That's a
and
very
then it switches,
sound.
and you can have it on infinite mode where it just keeps going back and forth. Or it can count down or count up. I think it can count up, but Has a little like charging dock that you set it on, and it's actually been really helpful for me. I've done Pomodoro type stuff in the past. I think mostly I just get super engrossed in work, and so it helps me to like actually stand up, or I really will go like 10 hours and not stand. And so I think I'll go straight through lunch. It'll be like 3:30, and I'm like, oh, I guess
I don't have
haven't
that
moved.
capability. That's crazy.
So that's
that's not something I have to guard against.
that's my issue, and this has helped fix it, kind of, sort of.
How much was it?
I don't remember because I got it off Kickstarter. It was probably $50 or $60, something like that.
Okay, I mean Kickstarter. That's cool. That's awesome. Okay, mine is I built this little vibe coded this little app. It is a DUPR rating predictor. So DUPR is pickleball rating,
Love it.
and essentially DUPR is very complicated. Like there's little you could win a tournament, but your DUPR could go down. DUPR calculates your game score. So like if I'm a better player, but I'm playing against a worse player, and I don't win by a certain point differential, it will actually lower my DUPR because there's like an expected score that should happen when I'm playing against somebody who's worse than me. There's not really a good tool to predict what your DUPR might change by if you're like based on a certain match or point differential. And so I did a combination of web scraping off like a bunch of different scores from a bunch of different people, and then an ML like predictive fitting model to try to come up with a good like rating predictor. I had a lot of fun building this, and
Yeah,
I
I
learned a
love that.
lot about web scraping and model fitting and different mathematical types of fits. And this was just a fun thing I did over the holidays.
Have you used
yeah,
it yet and like found it to be accurate, or?
I haven't done a tournament since last year, so I will be
Okay.
doing a bunch of tournaments coming up, and so we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
I'm gonna
It's
test
going
it.
to take over the pickleball world. That's cool. I love like this kind of like hyper personal software that like you wouldn't necessarily have built before. But
agree.
it's super helpful. And I think that's such a cool use case for AI.
Well, thank you everyone for listening or watching. And as always, if you have any questions or things that you want us to talk about, feel free to hit us up on social media or email us. But yeah, this was awesome. And thanks again, Chris, for chatting.
See ya.
See ya.